Portland, Gonzaga, tied atop the standings, but the all-important tiebreaker belongs to the Zags, correct?
Right. They won both of the matchups. And then, as you move down, Washington State sits in really good shape. They only have one game coming up, so they'll be able to play on Thursday, and then they rest to the tournament. Oregon State, solid weekend. They sweep the first time this year they've had a winning record overall. And Kennedy Schuler, just with the evolution of her as a point guard, really arriving in the last couple of weeks. And the 2 wins, just basically comes off to get water in a towel and then goes back in. 14 assists, just 1 turnover. It has really been able to handle things and move this team forward that we didn't really know who they were going to be or how good they could be.
Welcome back to Points in the Paint. We are delighted to bring aboard Nick Daschel, one of the best writers for the Oregonian. Nick, thanks so much for taking the time with us. Let's talk women's basketball, huh?
Sure, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. You're on the Oregon State beat on the men's and women's side, but we're going to talk about Scott Rueck and his club making a push in their first affiliate season with the WCC. Your take on Oregon State right now as we head into the final week of the regular season?
Well, I mean, they're in the hunt. I look at the top of the WCC and I think there's 5, maybe 6 teams that could win the tournament. I don't know if St. Mary's is capable, but I definitely think the top 5 could win it. And Oregon State's, in that mix. I think it would be a little more helpful if they finished 4th rather than 5th, just because you have one less game. But I mean, they've proven they can beat Gonzaga. They proved they can beat Portland. They haven't proven they can beat Washington State, but I don't know why they couldn't. I mean, we kind of knew this was going to happen, that the season was going to start off slow. It takes a while to learn what Scott wants them to do, and they're catching on. They've won, they won 6 out of 7, I think. They're playing better defensively. They seem to pick it up when they need to. They're not, not flashy. They don't blow teams out, but when they need to put teams away, they've been doing it lately.
Hey, Nick, when you go back to maybe December and you think about the WCC and on the women's side, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think we'd be sitting here with this exciting of a race heading, a week or so into the tournament?
Kind of, I did. I didn't think there was anybody that just stood out. I mean, you could see what Gonzaga was kind of scuffling, and, Portland was winning, but they weren't playing anybody that was, the big names. And so you kind of thought that the top end might be, pretty competitive, and that's kind of what it's turned out to be. I think Gonzaga and Portland maybe have, separated themselves a little bit, but boy, I actually thought it was going to be pretty tight, and it really has. Gonzaga and Portland are probably the best 2 teams in the league. I actually think Portland might be the best team in the league, but not by enough to say they're the prohibitive favorite to win the conference tournament. So, yeah, I thought this was going to be a really competitive league at the top end.
Before we jump into Portland, your take on Scott Rueck. He just picks up his 600th career victory. We know he spent quality seasons at George Fox, winning that national championship in a lower division. He comes to Oregon State, makes his presence felt, and he has picked up a ton of wins. You've covered him, talked to him. Your take on Rueck and his success in Corvallis?
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody should be surprised with what they're doing this year. I mean, they put this roster together kind of, just on the fly in last May and early in June, but he kind of got the players he wanted, and not at the level they've been used to getting, but they got enough players at the right positions that they've been able to, put a team together. They've got the post players, going, which he likes. And, they found a little bit from 3. That was a big issue early in the season. It's, still not up to what Oregon State's used to, but it's much better than it was. And once they got a little bit of perimeter shooting and figured out the defense, I mean, then that's what Scott does. He their defense is complicated, takes some time to figure out, but they figured it out. And, I expect they're going to be better and better in the next 2-3 weeks.
Nick, of all the players you've seen or coaches you've seen work in the WCC on the women's side this year, are there any performances that really stick out in your mind and go, wow, that was really fun, or a player maybe you didn't really know about that you've seen that's just has been memorable for you?
Well, I mean, I don't know if a player so much, but I mean, the game that just stood out to me was Portland's 25-point win over Oregon State. That was just the way Portland played that night, they could have beaten a lot of top 25 teams. That was probably the best performance of any WCC team this season, the way they just manhandled Oregon State. And Scott made it sound like he wasn't surprised that happened because it came out after Oregon State had beat them at Childs, but still the way they took apart Oregon State that night, that was probably the most impressive thing I've seen so far in the WCC
Yeah.
season.
I mean, you look at this pilot bunch, and there's a ton of veterans. They understand Mike Meek's system. Two-time defending champs in Vegas, beating the heavily favored Gonzaga club to win those titles. What is your take on the pilots from what you've seen this year?
I mean, it's extremely veteran. It's pretty much seniors across the board, and Mike's just a great coach. I mean, and they bought into what he's doing, and yeah, I mean, you look at the top end of the league too. It's USF is loaded with seniors. Oregon State, their four of their five stars are seniors. Portland's pretty much all seniors. I think Washington State's a little bit on the young side, but it's I mean, the top end is really a senior dominated part of the conference. So
And when you look at in Corvallis in particular and just the crowd, it feels like the transition to the WCC has really taken hold, and the enthusiasm and sort of the backing of the team, and sort of getting their balance back after what happened in the spring. Does it feel like that to you in the building?
yeah, that's kind of what Scott said the other day too, because I asked him about, picking it up here later in the season. He said a lot of it was, we went down to play Pacific in December. We didn't know Pacific from, Pacific University. I mean, really didn't know much about anything, about any of these teams in the league. Now that they're getting a second crack at these teams, they kind of know what they're about, and it feels a little not like a rivalry yet, but they at least know who some of these teams are, and so they felt like they've got a little bit, unlike the Pac-12, that they knew those teams inside and out every year. Now they're starting to pick up on some of these teams that they're playing now a second time, and probably a third time in the tournament. So yeah, that's been one thing for Oregon State.
Nick, before we let you go, you're an Oregon native. How satisfying has it been for you, who knows this game so well, to see the powerful surge of women's basketball in the state of Oregon? The Ducks, the Beavers, the Pilots in very good health.
Yeah, I mean, and the WNBA team coming in, and
Exactly. Yep.
I mean, I remember taking my daughter to a Portland Fire game, way back in the day, and too bad she's 30 now and lives in Boston, so I can't take her to the WNBA game, but yeah, it's been I'm actually surprised the WNBA hasn't been here earlier, because I mean, this state has really supported women's basketball, both the universities and even Portland's starting to pick it up with crowds.
Yes, exactly.
And so, but some of it goes back to the high schools too, Oregon City and my alma mater, and and
The
some of
dynasty.
the
The
Shout out.
dynasty of the Pioneers.
No doubt.
Glencoe with Mark Neffendorf, and
Yeah.
some of those guys back, they just built good girls basketball in the state, and it's kind of translated to the college level.
Nick, as always, thank you so much for what you do for our game. We appreciate the top shelf coverage. It matters. And thanks for joining us today.
All right, we'll appreciate it. Thanks.
Bringing this train to the station with Mary's takes on what I guarantee is going to be the nuttiest week of the season, because so much on the line. Mare, there's games, there's seedings. Go.
Yeah, there is so much, and I mean, I have just pages written of what could evolve here. But what do we know? We know that Gonzaga right now is tied with Portland, but they have the tiebreaker. So if they end up ultimately tied for first and share the title, Gonzaga will get the tiebreaker and be the number one seed. And then everything just kind of flows from there. The battle for the third seed, we know Washington State owns the tiebreaker. They have beaten Oregon State twice.
All right. So the only thing we do know is that the WCC tournament happens in Las Vegas, March 6th through the 11th. That's a for sure. And then everything else is just, I don't know. So,
And we know we'll be there, Ann.
yeah, oh yeah, heck yeah, we're going to be there, which means next week when we gather again, we'll have everything confirmed and it'll be connecting all the dots, and that's going to be fun as well. All right. Whew. We're going to watch with great interest the last week of the regular season in the WCC. We're going to put another episode of Points in the Paint in the books. Mary and I will be back next week as per usual, and we will set up the WCC tournament like nobody's business. Mary, thanks for joining me again today. Nobody better. And thanks for watching, all of you. See you next week.